Hello, I am C-3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin.
The episode opens with the live-action reveal of Jedi Ahsoka Tano kicking battle droid butt in the dead forest on Corvus. She's ultimately put face-to-face with the evil city magistrate, who we'll learn more about later. She demands information on this person's master. No such wish is granted. Meanwhile, Mando and Baby Yoda, who will be referred to heretofore by another name, are nearing the planet Corvus. They're in search of Ahsoka as well. Of course, Baby Yoda once again trying to nab that little chrome ball on the gear shift of the Razor Crest. He uses the Force to get it. When they land, Mando takes it back from him and puts it in his pocket, and they walk into town.
Din's keeping Baby Yoda hidden in kind of his satchel. He stands out, and this town is clearly repressed. There's a guy in the city, and he's like, "Don't talk to us." And so the guards call him in, saying the magistrate wants to speak to him. She clearly lives in like this palace-like area that is very Japanese styled, and it's kind of cultural inspiration. And she offers him a staff of pure Beskar to kill the Jedi that has been plaguing her, and that it is priceless to her to go kill him. And so to go kill the Jedi. And so she sends him off into the woods to go kill Ahsoka. And her kind of right hand is like, "You're going to need a lot of luck out there." Din gets out to the location as to where Ahsoka's supposed to be, and then boom, she springs him from ahead. She attacks him with her lightsabers. He puts up his Beskar to block, and ultimately then lassoes her with his sort of draw. I don't know what you would call it.
He ties her up.
Yeah, he ties her up with the rope that's up his sleeve. She does a backflip, frees herself, and as they do a quick standoff, he yells out her name to confirm that he was sent by Bo-Katan. And she is very intrigued and is very eager to talk, especially if it's about the little green guy.
That's right. So after they've had this little square off, she realizes that Mando maybe kind of comes in peace. So she shows some interest in Baby Yoda, takes the child off to maybe have some kind of like a Force-sensitive conversation, returns back to Mando and exclaims that the child's name is Grogu. And back in the day, he was trained at the Jedi Temple during the Clone Wars. After the Empire took over, he was hidden, and beyond that, his memory beyond the training is quite foggy. So I guess they run some more tests. Is that what happens? She decides that Grogu is just too attached to Din, familially speaking, for him to be a safe train. Lots of history of Jedis loving someone too much, and their fear clouding their purity or at least their
judgment.
Yeah, just they're probably not a good candidate, and so they strike up a little deal, because there's always a deal in an episode of Mando where well, what exactly does Din want? Din wants what's best for Grogu because he believes so firmly in creeds and religiosity. And what does Ahsoka want from Mando? Help me.
Ahsoka wants some extra help because she can't go and she can absolutely take the entire town by herself. She doesn't need Din's help, really. But and that's why she also doesn't uphold her end of the bargain. But she humors him to learn more about him and ensure that the child is in likely the right hands, but offers to train the child, or doesn't say that she won't go along with his deal, and takes his help to be able to kind of hold off the right hand of the magistrate while she takes out all of the guards and then goes and faces the magistrate herself. And while that's going on, Din holds him back. They kind of do an old Western standoff while Ahsoka does much more of a samurai standoff. Two battles ensue, one of words and blasters, where Mando comes out on top, and the other of Beskar and lightsabers, where the lightsabers come out on top after a little bit of toying, and then Ahsoka getting a little angry and then demanding the information that she had asked for the entire time. Where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? And then the big hammer dropped as what is that whole can of worms? And so from there on, we see that the town is saved, and they're able to go. And the guy who initially was afraid to talk to Mando, he is reinstated as the magistrate or governor. And from there, Mando basically goes back to get Grogu to bring him back to Ahsoka to train, and Ahsoka refuses, saying that the only other option is to go to Tython, where if Grogu can reach out to the Force, another Jedi may come looking for him with the ability to train him. Otherwise, you're too much like a father, and he's not ready to leave you, and I'm not ready to train someone who's that attached.
Right. So what we're kind of afraid of happening through this whole episode is the separation of Mando and Grogu. Doesn't happen in the end. In fact, they do fly away together,
thankfully,
to head off to yet another place where maybe the Jedi can help out. For sure, though, I think that these two belong together as partners. That's really what the series is about. They are going to make us fear about that, probably in an upcoming episode. It's very possible that season 2 will end with these two going separate ways, and that will definitely hurt, but on purpose.
I think that they will be going separate ways because I believe Moff Gideon will kidnap Grogu.
Maybe.
Between these seasons.
Yes.
Or potentially a Jedi who does arrive in the very end gets kidnapped, the way I thought Ahsoka might get kidnapped for the being with more blood to spare and a high midichlorian count. But that seems unlikely to introduce in this short amount of time remaining. So I would believe that Grogu would be the more likely one to be kidnapped.
So let's talk about Ahsoka. There's so many questions to ask you, longtime Clone Wars fan. We've talked about Ahsoka a little bit not so long ago on this podcast when we recapped the final arc of the Clone Wars on Disney+. So I kind of feel like I know her in a minimal way, but maybe more than a lot of Mandalorian fans who are now seeing her for the first time. First things first, how do you feel seeing her in live action? Does she feel like Ahsoka? This is a different performer taking on this now iconic character. Did it translate for you?
It did.
Yep.
It definitely did. I think the internet was overwhelmingly positive, and I think that's great. And I was really, really, really happy with it as an overall. I was mixed at points, especially throughout the first viewing, significantly less so after following viewings. I've watched it, I think, 4 times now, and it's great. And there are shots and parts of the episode that are significantly more Ahsoka than others.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't kind of run throughout the entire episode as well. It's just I've spent Ahsoka might be the character with the most screen time in all of Star Wars.
True.
She might be.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, maybe Anakin, but probably not. And so with that being the case, you get so familiar with this character that you understand them, and when they seem different, it's going to stand out to you. But we knew Ahsoka from the age of 14 to 17, and then from the age of at the age of 33, I think it was, or something like that. And she's 46 here.
Yeah.
And so, or 33 or in her mid 30s or whatever. And she's 46 here. We don't know what's occurred in the last decade of Ahsoka's life. And she has much more melancholy. There's clearly, it's clearly not a happy story.
No.
It's been rough. She's completely alone. She's by herself on this mission where she's angry. She needs to find Thrawn. And I think there's a little bit of maybe distrust in herself as well as to why she didn't want to take on Grogu, but was still felt that maybe there was another Jedi who could. And so I think that was mainly my only reservation at the start. And I think it really came from now I'm really, really intrigued about kind of the subtlety that's built in throughout that performance, because I'm still able to see the original Ahsoka, and that shines through now every time I see it after. And then the parts that feel a little different and that's a little that's a little intense, a little murdery at the start. And then there are some shots that looked a little odd, and like they had to shrink the montrals, which is the headpiece, because they tried it a little larger, but apparently for stunts it made it. This was the reason as to why they went with the sizing that they did, and it even looks a little larger in the posters, for example.
What about the size of her eyes? Because I remember you saying before that her eyes need to be a little bit bigger than your typical humanoid person. It doesn't look odd to me. Like if her eyes have been enlarged for the show, it's very believable to the extent where you're like, well, maybe Rosario Dawson just has huge eyes and I just never noticed. It works, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it did work. It worked much better than I expected it to.
Yeah,
in that regard. And I still think it could have maybe made her look a little bit more like the character with slightly enlarged eyes, but it didn't need to. And then budgetary reasons, I get why they did that. There have been some people who've had issues with the leku, which would be the hanging down part of the headpiece, the montrals.
Okay.
And that some people thought it looked a little like foam, which it probably was some form of. I saw it more as like the way skin folds and the fact that. So I liked it, whereas most people saw it as a bit of a take back on that. So no, most of it gets me excited about the potential, and I think that Rosario Dawson did a really good job, and I would be shocked if there's not an Ahsoka series next, or not necessarily next, but in the works, that seriously just got bumped up on the green light scale.
Maybe that definitely seems to be a consensus for a lot of people, that this kind of felt like a backdoor pilot for an Ahsoka series. I don't know if I necessarily felt that instinct, but I'd be open to it because I mean, I've loved everything I've seen of her. I know that there's a history where she took some getting used to early on in the Clone Wars, but now
only a couple seasons.
Yeah, no, now she's pretty hardcore. And one of the observations I had when we watched those final Clone Wars episodes was she is so acrobatic. It works, and frankly, quite violent. She has a violent streak in her as a younger person.
Anakin was her master.
Makes a lot of sense. So it works fine. Just the physicality of Ahsoka works fine in an animated context. I wondered how well it would translate. Well, two things. She's older, and so maybe she doesn't have to move as quickly. But also, it worked fine. She moves very quickly, and she can handle herself. It's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Rosario Dawson was cast very likely in part for her physicality. She's very, very capable in this. And it's proven. The flips are great. The movement, I mean, obviously there was stunt work as well done by people. But you can see the parts where that are clearly not stunt work. And she's really intense in it, but she's able to kind of break back and forth between those two. The flips are good. The movement on the roof was very Ahsoka. The movement felt very Ahsoka, but a little older, and that would make sense that she wouldn't be as acrobatic as she would be when she's a fucking teenager.
And
so it worked. It really worked.
Lightsabers. Really nice to see some like serious lightsaber action on my home screen for the first time in a very long time. White lightsabers, no less, which we knew, but she's using.
They look so badass in live action. They look so badass in live action.
Yeah, angelic.
Because also Rebels had a really thin quality to the lightsabers.
Yeah.
And so this is the best look we've ever had of the sabers to make them really feel real. And there's a significant difference in their length too, which is accurate. It brought to life wonderfully.
Is this the first time it's been so clear to us that lightsabers can't penetrate Beskar steel? Because that was really surprising to me that they can have a duel with this big Beskar spear. And I mean, the first thing that came to my head was the fact that a lightsaber did kill Jango Fett, but I guess there's no Beskar steel on his neck piece or whatever.
Yep, and that's absolutely one of the key angles. We also don't know exactly if the Fett armor is Beskar. It wasn't in Legends. It likely is in canon now. Just because it would just make more sense. The same way that I believe that the Dark Troopers will be made from Beskar and not Frick. But the way that it was used and the way that it's done in battle, that is a consistency in Star Wars, that Beskar cannot be penetrated, and that's why the Mandalorians were able to fight. Most people were surprised by that and thought it was amazing, and I thought it was amazing the way that it was done, the way that Din was able to block it. I don't know if this is the case, but I would believe that lightsabers can probably cut through Beskar.
Yes, with some effort.
But my guess is, though, no one's going to be leaving their arm out for like the way Qui-Gon, how much effort it takes for him to cut through those blast doors.
Yeah.
My guess is that you maybe need that much effort to cut through some tinfoil of Beskar. So I believe it could be done. It's just, it's so much more resistant, the same way that anything would have a melting point. And in the cases of duels and this use case, I imagine it can hold up, and it clearly did. And that's very likely what Din will be using to fight Moff Gideon, and that's likely the lightsaber fight that Gideon or Giancarlo Esposito referenced.
You know, we've talked about it before, but it is funny how much that Qui-Gon scene at the start of The Phantom Menace, him like trying to get through those blast doors, that is such a like neutralizer. It's such a case study for me in the power of a lightsaber against like other crude materials. And so it's funny.
A cool moment.
Absolutely. It's so cool. Okay, so I want to talk about some other people and as they relate to Ahsoka. So we've now seen Ahsoka and Bo-Katan, who are kind of a singular unit in those episodes of Clone Wars that I've seen. And so to me, they're kind of a team. It would be so interesting to see these two together in live action.
That was very much their first team up. Mm-hmm. Or I guess, yeah, their first team up from the start. They certainly started out as enemies, and that's why there was a little reluctance in Bo-Katan approaching Ahsoka, but Ahsoka being the one who had understood the errors of the Jedi a little bit more than others and had been kind of cast aside.
Do you think these two will be brought together in this show?
At some point, yes.
Yeah.
At some point, I do. I think Ahsoka will likely come back in this show in some capacity, in probably a small capacity, because I believe that she will get a spinoff.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Bo-Katan, and I think there is actually still a chance that Bo-Katan could get a spinoff, to be honest. But I think I would imagine that Bo-Katan makes more logical sense to be in the Mandalorian universe.
Yes.
She is a Mandalorian, and she is the heiress to Mandalore. And I think that it would make sense if she had Grief Karga regularity in the series moving forward, whereas Ahsoka can have like, I'm trying to think of somebody who's Kuiil regularity.
Right.
2 or 3 episodes of significant importance, and then can deviate from the show's path and go on her own large journey. Whereas I think Bo-Katan belongs more in the longer term planning.
Well, we have reason to believe, I think, that Rosario Dawson is been brought on for at least a semi-long haul. They didn't just bring her in for one episode. That's a very fair assumption. So whether it's more utilization in this series or in her own spinoff, which would be very reasonable because she's been central to other Star Wars episodic installments before. She's very precious to Dave Filoni, who of course is powerful and in a good way. And so that would be fine. I do start to worry that we're presuming there are far too many spin-offs in the works. And just because there's a cool character doesn't mean they should have their own show. And it should only be one cool character per TV show. I think what you said about Bo-Katan being the heiress of Mandalore and therefore belonging on the show called The Mandalorian makes plenty of sense. And frankly, she's cool. She's not cool enough to be the star of her own show.
No, I would agree that there would need to be a lot more supporting around that. And that's why I think that this is a much better fit in that regard.
So you think probably Gideon, the lead antagonist for The Mandalorian, Thrawn, the lead antagonist for the Ahsoka show?
To be honest, no, I actually don't.
Okay.
That my ultimate belief and hope, to be honest, is that's the misconception that we will run with for a long time. And the majority, like if they did an Ahsoka show, which I mean, of the things that they have in the works, I've been saying for a long time that the Rebels sequel show is in the works.
Yeah.
It's a matter of whether it's animated or live action, or maybe they'll do 2. And I've always thought that. And that's what this is. An Ahsoka show would be a live action Rebels sequel, or would be something that was one of the first complete handshake shows where there was like one timeline of this character is told in animation and they'll run a live action one at the same time. But Ahsoka would be the character that you would do that experimentation with, because she has been the face of new Star Wars the most consistently for a really long period of time. And interestingly enough, I just looked at IMDb today. The top 7 rated things in Star Wars and all of Star Wars ratings are from number 1 to number 7, the final 4 episodes of Clone Wars. Those are the top 4 rated things in all of Star Wars. They're rated 9.9, 9.9, 9.9, and 9.8.
Yikes.
With
thousands
and thousands and thousands and thousands of so these are heavily reviewed aspects. After that is Twilight of the Apprentice, which would be the season 2 finale of Rebels, where Ahsoka appears to die against her fight with Darth Vader. She ultimately, of course, does not. The 6th ranked episode is another episode in Clone Wars. And the 7th ranked thing in all of Star Wars and IMDb is this episode of The Mandalorian. So
no movies.
No, I mean, and that's obviously ridiculous, but that's also because these the eternity of time and the way the movies are ranked on something like IMDb. But what I'm just kind of getting at in the general, that's a good way to glean a consensus of review, and that Ahsoka turns up for Disney. Ahsoka has been a winner for them in the reviews category and building fan base. And so when you look at the things that they can put in the hopper, this one, they just got confirmation, makes total sense for them to do.
Yeah.
And it's a business. So I don't see it not happening. But back to my point on Thrawn, I think Thrawn's been working with Ezra. I think that's the reason as to why she's so pissed she can't find Ezra, why they've failed, or why they've not had any success to this point, or why she's still in such anger to find him. My guess is that because the Empire fell, Thrawn has no need for the Empire anymore, or being aligned with them. He has his other goals to protect the Chiss and to protect the galaxy and adjacent galaxies from marauders called the Grisk. And so he has ulterior motives, and I ultimately think that would be kind of an interesting dynamic, and would be something later revealed, to have multiple sides and confusion as to, okay, who are your allegiances with, and making Thrawn a more intriguing character, as the books don't necessarily portray him as evil, but calculating.
Ezra is the youthful, dark-ish hero of Rebels. He's kind of the lead character of Rebels, and he sort of dances around turning evil at some point.
He does a little bit, but fully rejects it.
Okay.
And he ends up with Thrawn because he catapults them through hyperspace to get rid of Thrawn. And so they're on a Star Destroyer catapulted to unknown space. And so my guess is they've been shipwrecked somewhere. And then Thrawn and Ezra realize they're not so different, because that's a bit of Thrawn's thing. He's not in it for the Empire. Mm-hmm. He's in it for the Chiss, and is lying to everyone in the Empire.
And Thrawn has been in an animated series before. He's in Rebels.
He is in Rebels and has had his own book series, and was the main antagonist in the Heir to the Empire series, which was the first series of novels released to take place post Return of the Jedi in the 90s. They were massively successful and were the only Star Wars that existed for a decade before the prequels came back, and are now legends, but some people still consider it to be some of the best things in Star Wars, although it's really not. Some aspects of it, like Thrawn, really are.
Want to talk about Corvus? Some of the best set design I've seen in Star Wars in years. It looked,
oh my God, yes,
comic booky, and the cinematography of it, just in general, the art design of this episode was stunning.
How long have I been asking for a different colored atmosphere?
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Long.
Yeah.
Green atmosphere. Thank you.
Totally.
Thank you, Star Wars.
Yeah.
That is so doable in the volume, and it looked so... It was so cool. There was nothing that was extreme about the terrain,
mm-hmm.
but the atmosphere, and you're right, how close the moon was, so that the way that the shots could be done in that, and the trees, the way that they were stripped, but the fact that things could still be green on the end. It was just such a beautifully shot episode.
Every
and the inspiration from such Star Wars inspirations.
Yeah, every frame is a painting. There, you could so easily make a 12-month calendar or an 18-month calendar out of just shots from this episode.
Did you watch the concept art in the credits?
No, I'm bad for that. I don't stick around for that, and I should.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It really is. And so it also shows clearly the intention for Ahsoka's montrals to be larger as well.
Well,
but there's some really cute shots of like her meeting Grogu and Din.
And the other inspiration, and you alluded to this in the recap, is how heavily this episode is a tribute to Kurosawa filmmaking, which is, of course, integral to the inspiration of Star Wars in general. And I think Filoni deliberately wanted to acknowledge that in this episode. And so there are direct references cinematographically speaking, but then just the fact that there's like a very clear, like, imperial kind of... Say it again?
You know who was on set for this one?
Oh, was Mr. Lucas there?
Mr. Lucas was there.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, so apparently the famous photo that went around in January of George Lucas holding Baby Yoda, Rosario Dawson is standing right behind the photographer.
Oh, cool.
Fully dressed as Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And this is months before anybody knows anything, but
so
he was on set for his apprentice's big day.
Evil Magistrate Morgan Elsbeth, does she have any other existing canon in Star Wars? She felt kind of backstoried to me.
Oh, just like her cousin Tyler Smith and their place down at the Burger King on like Town Street. Like Morgan Elsbeth? What kind of Star Wars name is that?
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Oh,
I thought it was a terrible Star Wars name. I thought it was way too earthy. It was like, Timothy Townsend, or Craig Melbourne. I'm just like, what the fuck? That's not a Star Wars name. That's just a reasonable human name.
It's just not at all how I felt about it. Like, I completely had the opposite feeling. I was like, oh, that's a human name, but it kind of works in Star Wars the way some human names do.
That's the thing. Morgan could have worked and Elsbeth could have worked, but you couldn't do both.
Okay.
The same with Luke could not work with a Smith.
Right.
But you could put like Gorgashbon Smith.
Yeah.
That'd be funny in Star Wars and would work the same way Luke Skywalker works.
Right. You can't have...
But you can also do your Biggs Darklighters too. You can go full crazy on both, but not Earth on both.
Yeah, nobody can be named Norm Macdonald in the Star Wars universe. That would be wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a perfect example. But I did like her as a character. I thought she was really cool. I think there will be clearly more tales of her kind. There was some information that she was from one of the non-Night Sister tribes on Dathomir, which would be consistent with her people being slaughtered. However, someone made what I thought was a much better guess, was that she was part of the Ming Po race, which was a group that was attacked by Mandalorians and then taken over by the Empire during the Clone Wars, which would have been an even better fit, and the tattoos fit that better. But she appears to have undergone a lot of shit and is now likely working directly with Thrawn. Thrawn is a resource hound. He's a pillager for sure.
Okay, now the other most important thing about this episode is Grogu.
It's the name. Let's start there. We got to start there.
Yep.
I like it.
Me too.
You remember me mentioning this the week prior, right?
Yeah, you did call it.
Yeah, I had heard it. Kevin Smith pointed me in the right direction, or mentioned it. I was listening to his podcast, but it was it seemed weird written down, but seemed great, especially after his reaction. Like Ahsoka's line, Grogu and I can feel each other's thoughts. Grogu, huh?
I know.
Just like the little, like, he knew exactly. I was like, oh my God, finally, my name is not Kid.
He does continue to call him Kid a little bit in the episode, which is fine.
And Buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is super sweet. But
it is.
I thought it really worked.
Me too. It's not universally appreciated.
No.
But why do you think that is? Like, it's no sillier than Yoda, except Yoda is a name that's existed for 40 years. So, like, what
people wanted it to start with a Y.
Oh, I don't know. Is that why, or is that just some dumb excuse?
No, I think that's it to a degree, because Yoda Yaddle, but at the same time, you're right. It's it's not Baby Yoda, and so that's of course going to annoy people. I think it works, and you can imagine Yoda saying it. Yoda probably named him.
Wow, that's maybe true. I also think it's ridiculous to make any kind of monumental saga-defining choice based on Yaddle ever having existed, when it's all they can do to pretend Yaddle never existed at all. For example, in this episode, and maybe you can color some background here for me, why doesn't Ahsoka know who Yaddle is?
Yaddle died between the Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars, and Ahsoka was only she was like a Padawan learner. Before, like, not a Padawan learner. That was what she was under Anakin. She was a
youngling.
She was a youngling.
Yeah.
Thank you. She was, I guess, still technically a youngling while Yaddle was on the council, and she died prior to being in cahoots with the higher ups.
I do bet they wish that Yaddle was never there. It just kind of is in the way.
Yaddle was backup Yoda.
Yeah.
So when they were going through mock-ups of what Yoda would look like, they mocked up Yaddle, which was just be Yoda with Qui-Gon's hair. And then they were like, this looks like a woman. And so they had another puppet, and then they put her on the council. It was their first attempt at Yoda.
Right.
And so it looks ridiculous. Yaddle had a cool kind of... and Yaddle exists in canon, like Jedi Fallen Order. There's this really cool little tidbit where this fat little alien... what's his name? I can't remember, but he's the guy who's the pilot of the ship that your main character Jedi Cal is the Stinger Mantis. It's the crew he's on, and so he's like, I knew this Jedi once. They came in, saved people, a little green, absolutely brilliant, one of the most amazing I've ever seen. Oh, Master Yoda? No, I'm talking about Yaddle. Yaddle was incredible. And so that was just, I think that was one of the only canon references to Yaddle, and it's just like a little background conversation. So you're definitely right. There's not been much use, and they're using Grogu to tell more stories about this race, and that's the appropriate choice because Grogu is fucking adorable.
It is. I find it so silly when people feel like they are entitled to a say in the matter, or if like they thought it might be a cute idea if his name also had a Y, but then that means they're completely not open to anything else. Like a lot of Star Wars characters have silly names. Yoda is one of them. And Grogu, while it doesn't really incorporate many of the same letters, kind of sounds like Yoda in a strange way. I actually think it falls in form with this mysterious race quite neatly.
Yeah. No, I think it certainly works, and it further aligns with the theory that I've had, which I'm sticking with, that I've heard absolutely nowhere else, and that is, I think there's going to be a very scary scene when Grogu goes into like a hibernation.
Maybe
because I think Grogu is going to grow,
level up.
Yeah, I think that's very much how it's going to be done. It's going to be a very weird aging process, and like it will be like he'll sleep, and then like a month later he'll be a foot taller.
That might bother people because they're so in love with him as a baby.
Yeah, but you do that at like the end of the series or something.
So 2 questions about Grogu then. Who was the Jedi that hid him? What happened to his memory thereafter, I guess? And also, what Jedi is he going to meet when he's placed upon the stone on Tython? Are we going to run into a Luke? Is there going to be some kind of Mace Windu storyline entering here? What other Jedis are going to be involved in his life?
My first actual thought, surprisingly, this was like a weird gut kind of reaction that I got. And I mentioned him a little while back as a character who survived Order 66 that I wanted to see brought back into a show. And I've actually seen on a couple of the podcasts, or heard on a couple of the podcasts, that like them bringing this up as well. But Quinlan Voss would be an interesting character to come back. And that was the guy with the yellow tattoo across his face in the background of the Phantom Menace. And he was introduced as a very interesting character in the Clone Wars. And then there was a book that Katie Lucas, George Lucas' daughter, wrote an arc on the Clone Wars, which centered around Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Voss. And then Clone Wars was canceled, and they turned it into a book. And it was absolutely excellent. And Quinlan Voss is a really great character. And so he would be an interesting one to potentially come back. There's someone like Cal Kestis, who was specifically looking to protect the next generation of young Jedi. There's someone like Ezra, who we've been introducing characters in this kind of timeline that works. Ezra also holds a stronger connection to the non-human Force sensitives than human Force sensitives. And so that's something that nobody seems to be mentioning, but is kind of another area that could point to it being Ezra. But I would imagine, once again, like Ezra makes about as much sense as having Ahsoka be the trainer. So why it doesn't really align, in my opinion. It could be no one that calls out or Grogu calls out to. It could alert Palpatine. And then, of course, there is the most obvious carrot tease of them all. And the big question mark, and would they really do it, is Luke Skywalker.
Right.
I don't think Mace Windu. I don't think that would make any real sense. If they're going to bring him back, he really needs to die,
properly.
Yeah, but also within the time period between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. If you're ever going to bring him back, he is not living for any more than 5-10 more years after his current believed death. In my opinion, it's crazy.
Well, then it can't be who Grogu calls out to in the times of the Mandalorian. But that could be Luke, who, by the way, is certainly much younger than Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy, but a little bit older than Return of the Jedi. Can Mark Hamill play that character in this time period?
It would depend. It would all depend on how much the character needed to be in it.
Yeah.
And you could clearly flash back a little bit like they did in The Rise of Skywalker. You could, if you're going to do it in a small capacity, people are clamoring on the internet for friggin' Sebastian Stan again. And so do you give in to the internet again and do what you did with Rosario Dawson? Well, it worked that time. I don't think it's going to work this time the same way.
It's nothing against Sebastian Stan, who's a fine actor, and he does kind of, in the odd picture, bear a resemblance to a younger Mark Hamill. But, first of all, I think anytime you can get Mark Hamill, you should. And,
yes.
And I'm pretty sure you can. He's pretty famously game for stuff, especially if it's being done well. And this is being done well. And I mean, you would have to young him down, no question. But look, that's not exactly beyond the powers of Disney in 2021.
No, it's not. It would come down to budget, and then that would be season 3's budget, which they don't need to worry about now. And you write it this way so that potentially you can go and consider that, and you have that as an option. Not likely, and they likely know exactly what they're doing and have already sought approval before writing that in. I would certainly hope so. But I would much prefer it to be Mark Hamill. I certainly would. The thought of Sebastian Stan or somebody else, I would rather it be somebody else than Sebastian Stan, because I would rather somebody else be able to work with Mark Hamill and do two-person to do the role. It's something where you can, if you're going to do a small amount of Luke Skywalker, you can invest in having two people do the role by having Mark Hamill voice, and then you deep fake as opposed to doing whatever bullshit CGI that they do, because it looks a billion times better.
Different broad hypothetical. Will Grogu ever see a Force Ghost Yoda?
I think it's very possible.
That'd be cool.
I think it's very possible.
Yeah.
I loved the little smile and shared moment that they had when Ahsoka mentioned Yoda.
Yeah.
And then Grogu looked up, and then they kind of shared that smile. That was actually the first moment that I had where I was like, oh, there's Ahsoka. Like when I was watching the episode for the first time, and I was already fully into it because I was loving the episode regardless. But you could see that smile and the poncho that she was wearing. It was just, and she was very relaxed, and you could really see it. But then in the same way, this character's been reserved and on guard the entire episode. So of course that's going to be the first time that you're going to kind of see that sort of light being shown. But I think it would make sense. He's gone to a lot of other Jedi. Not like Yoda is so damn powerful and has trained every Jedi that went through the temple,
including Grogu.
including Grogu. He was
Yeah.
absolutely one of the many masters Grogu had.
Yeah.
And I assume Yaddle was too, probably.
Weird.
Mace Windu probably was. Now Mace Windu wasn't. That was Mace Windu would have been too good for that. But like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I think it was really cool the way Ahsoka had the conversation with Grogu, and like she was able to sort of understand him, but then was able to certainly understand his name was Grogu.
Yeah.
And translate that. That was great.
So is it safe to assume, considering how many potential Jedis get turned down for training because of the fear they possess, is it safe to assume the galaxy is just polluted with people who could have been Jedi except for their love in their life?
No, because no. If you were in the Republic, if your world was in the Republic, they had a system for being able to identify you. They had enough outposts to be able to ensure that anyone with a strong enough force sensitivity was able to be
so you could have a mom and
located.
a dad. Okay.
No. So you were taken away as a child.
Oh.
You were approached to your mother, which is not cool. But you were approached to your parents like your child is special. We would like to take them and raise them in the Jedi Temple, and that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Parents obliged. In the case of Anakin was on a backwater planet, was a slave, and so there are definitely Tamiri Bleg.
Right.
That's stable. That's Broom Boy.
Yes.
He's an example of the potential of the galaxy. That there's so much more potential.
He's on the grid
in the underprivileged parts, in the same way that it is on Earth. Okay. When you look at the talent and like the brilliant minds that could live in some of the poorest places in the world, and their inability to be able to utilize that on nothing of their choice, but just bad circumstance, and the gifts that some people just will never be able to utilize. And so that's why Luke Skywalker and Anakin are such special stories, because they're the outliers, yet they're at the center of the story at the same time.
Right. So, anything you didn't like about this episode? Anything that you would take back?
The timing. Mando was able to go on his side adventure. Bo knew that she was going to be in the city of Caladan on the planet of Corvus, and she was still there, and that she decided that she was going to give them one more day. And then Mando shows up in that 1 day time period, and just so that they've got the perfect window of opportunity. And this was after, like, did Bo come straight from Ahsoka? And then Ahsoka was just like, I'm going to just take the weekend, and then I'll go to like walk into Caladan and tell them that I'm there, and then I'll ask I need to know about the Master, and then I'll give them a day. And then so Bo goes and finds Mandalorian and was like, oh, go to the city. Like it's impossible the way that the timing works. It's so convenient.
Yeah.
Aside from that, and you suspend the disbelief in that, there's a couple really murdery shots and a little too much enjoyment on Rosario Dawson's face.
Okay.
In said shots. But no, other than that, there really wasn't. I don't think it was one of the top 8 things in Star Wars. Like, for example, like comparing it to like that IMDb thing.
Yeah.
Like, and even comparing it, like, is it a top 8 episode of Star Wars television? Probably not.
Interesting.
Is it a top 15? Probably.
See, so. I it's so funny. We always have that instinct to rate things in Star Wars more than anywhere else for some reason in pop culture. And I do it too. And my first instinct was like, wow, this is as good as some of the better Star Wars movies. And a part of me still feels that way. And I think it's harmless to say so because it's generally a positive instinct, and that's good. But it does frustrate me that so many, and you and I have, we're on the record saying what we say about the sequel trilogy, which by and large I really like. But it's flawed, and that's fine. It frustrates me that so many people think that they're making some kind of well-informed hot take stance when they say The Mandalorian is so much better than the sequel trilogy. I don't see why you can't just in an isolated way like The Mandalorian without having to put something else down. Like, yeah, look, you're connecting with this thing. You didn't connect with something else. Neither of those facts are a crime. But it's just unfortunate that we can't even, and when I say we, I mean the royal we as a Star Wars fan base, we for some reason have this problem assigning any kind of credibility to something without taking it away from somewhere else. I don't know why even our positives have to be laced with a negativity, like a
yeah.
I think it's toxic. I mean, that's what fan culture tends to be.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree. But no, I think on the positive side of things, I think it is. And by saying it is one of the like best things in Star Wars, it is. And that's because The Mandalorian is one of the best things in Star Wars as an overall. And that's the best part about television. The worst things in all of Star Wars, full stop, not even close, come from animation.
But they
come from the Resistance and Clone Wars.
But they were just episodes of TV, and then they're over. Yeah,
exactly. That's the reason as to why movies carry a different level of weight, because you need to be significantly smarter with your decisions, and you can't play a long game the same way.
Right.
Whereas there can be like the second episode of this season. The second episode of this season, plot-wise, is not that important.
Right.
The second episode of this season is extremely important for the character development and so that you can understand the overall story. And so just because you may not like the episode, it has allowed you to like other parts of the series more,
right,
and Star Wars as a whole more. And so you have to be able to evaluate the forest and the trees almost. And so I think that's way better. And that's why Star Wars, it fits so right with television.
Yeah.
And I think that's so exciting as to the possibilities as to what's going to come. And I think there's going to be a lot to come. And live action Thrawn, I'd be very curious to see that. And I'm really loving the amount of online support that is spilling over from Katie Sackhoff playing Bo-Katan and people who are actually Googling who voiced Thrawn and realizing how perfect Lars Mikkelsen would be for that.
Maybe it'll happen.
Yeah, I would love it. I think that would be great. Actually, I didn't watch House of Cards, but I watched his scenes from House of Cards. He played Viktor Petrov, who is like the Vladimir Putin.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
so you watched it?
That dude is kind of scary, and
yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, so that's the guy. And so I watched his House of Cards episodes, and I was like, oh, this is just extra confirmation. And he was amazing in Sherlock as well.
Nice.
And so I think because of the pedigree that he certainly has as an actor, and also the fact that his brother was in Star Wars as well, that he's already the voice of the character.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. It was a long time ago. We were discussing, like, in a perfect world, who would play Thrawn. And I do remember us saying that, like, your Michael Fassbender type movie star would be suitable for a role like that. Might be true, but if we're going to do an episodic Thrawn, it's not going to be an A-list movie star, and maybe that's for the best.
I think it absolutely is for the best, and I also think that's generally the best for Star Wars.
Yes, me too.
For the most part across the board. And like, yes, someone like Michael Fassbender, a lot of people have thrown out there, and I think he would do a good job. But at the same time, you people think that because he was young Magneto, and because he was Steve Jobs,
and it's for the same reason. For the same reason, people still say that I don't know, James McAvoy.
Walter White would have made a really good Lex Luthor. Bryan Cranston.
Okay, that's a good. I was going to go. I mean, a more obvious example is James Bond. Like, James McAvoy could play a really good James Bond. Like, no, you're forgetting that it's never been good when it's somebody you know that well.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah. That's the reason why we love Daniel Craig, was because he was like, oh, that guy. Maybe I've seen him in a thing. If you were British, you'd say that maybe.
Yeah.
Not American though.
No.
Oh, unless you were like a big Layer Cake fan.
The only things that I would take back are such small, unnecessary things. I think Mando leaves the Razor Crest wide open when he walks into town, and that bothers me. Like, it's a thing that happens.
That's reasonable. Yeah,
it's a thing that happens in television when they like walk into an apartment and the door is still open when they walk. It's just like, it's this weird little thing that, like, anyway, it stands out, I think, more to people than the makers of TV realize. I actually don't care at all about the Beskar spear. I something about spears are stupid to me, and I think he's not going to have a use for that, or it's going to like be in the way or something.
I want it to get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be too long.
Okay.
And then I want him to break it.
Okay.
And then give the bottom quarter to Grogu.
Ah.
Grogu's got his little fighting stick.
Right.
It's just a little too big for him. He doesn't practice with something like that. But yeah, I agree. It's boring, but our Mando needs to be able to take on a lightsaber, and this is the best way for him to be.
You're right. This is how he's going to have a lightsaber duel. That's true.
Yeah, it's just he needs to be he's the protagonist. He needs to be the one to take on Gideon at some point, and this is the only item that he has. And this, along with his blaster and jetpack, will make him very formidable.
We should do trivia questions, I guess. I've got a couple of trivia questions here.
I did struggle actually a little bit with my trivia.
Me
It's
too.
not come up with many, but yeah, let's do it.
Nice and easy Padawan question. What does Lang presume about Mando when they first meet outside the gates?
What does he presume about Mando?
He compliments him on his armor, and then he asks him...
Oh, if he's a hunter?
That's right. And then he says... Guild? And then
yes, guild. Last time I checked.
Yeah. What does that mean exactly? Like, are you like on the grid as a hunter? Is that what he's saying? Like you belong to some kind of organization?
Oh, the guild. Yeah. He was in the guild in season 1. Grief Karga was his guild leader.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I gave away my 2 Padawan questions. So
yeah,
far.
I know we've been having a pretty intense conversation.
Yeah, and I didn't have many backups. I'll give you a hard Padawan and a reasonable night question after.
Okay.
Yeah, what type of droids acted as Morgan's 2 primary guards?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. They're like battle droids, I guess.
Yeah, they're HK-87 assassin
well,
droids.
That's so funny because I have that here, but it's as a part of my my Jedi Knight question for you. What language do the HK-87 assassin droids speak?
Oh, you fucking kidding me? That is a wonderfully deep cut. The HK-87 assassin droids are follow-ups to the HK-47 assassin droids, which were assassin droids that were your sidekick in Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, okay.
And this character, he calls humans meat bags, and was one of the most like loved characters in Legends, and was considered by a lot of people to be the inspiration for the character 000 in Dr. Aphra, which is a protocol droid who's been also programmed for torture, and K2SO. So kind of like a blend of those two. And so a very, very good character. And so these are the I guess 40 versions later, the HK-87s. With all of that logic and the fact that they work for Thrawn, Cybisti is the closest thing I can guess.
Look, I mean, all of what you just said sounds very informed, so I'm not going to tell you you're incorrect. But in this episode, they speak Huttese.
Oh my God, Huttese sounded it, and it seemed so logical. I went with Thrawn's native language because I figured that was the more educated guess, but Huttese is exactly what it sounded like.
I mean, look,
Huttese is such an easy one to understand. You hear it so much in the OT.
Right. One of them says Boshuda, which translates to greetings in Huttese. But what you said sounded good too.
Yeah, man. If it had been Cybisti, I would have been so damn proud of myself.
Yeah,
especially for the mental gymnastics to get there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Damn. Night question.
Okay.
Me, I guess.
All right.
What are Morgan's guards armed with?
Oh, she does say, but I don't know. I don't remember.
A350 blaster rifles.
Okay. Is that a weapon that's used elsewhere?
I don't know. I'm not a huge blaster nerd, so I only know kind of the main ones.
I know you're going to get this, but it still seemed otherwise like a Jedi Master question because you are the master, but this is not something anyone else would know, or at least not the layman would know.
I hope I do after that intro.
No, you will. You will. What animal alludes to Ahsoka in this chapter even before she appears?
Oh yes, the convor.
That's right.
I was so proud of myself. I noticed that the first time, and I somebody else described it this way, so I'm not the first one to say it. But the GIF of Leonardo DiCaprio on the couch, or the meme from what's the Hollywood one?
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah. The one where he's like pointing, like, oh.
Right.
That was exactly how I felt when I was like, Morai, because that's the name of the convor.
It's like an owl, right? It looks a little bit like an owl, and it follows her around. It's an
owl. Yes, when Ahsoka died on Mortis, and her life was saved by the daughter of Mortis. She transferred her life essence into Ahsoka to save her because she was dying, and so she gave her last little bit of essence, which she's a god, so that was enough to bring Ahsoka back to life. Morai was the daughter of Mortis's, pet spiritual companion. Yeah, pet kind of. It was an owl who followed her around, and then continued to follow Ahsoka around throughout the Clone Wars and then into Rebels. And so as soon as I saw an owl in the trees, I was so excited to see Morai. Morai also indicated her return and then her survival in the World Between Worlds. And then also when we see Vader discovering Ahsoka's lightsaber on that ice planet on the very final shot of the Clone Wars, and he sees an owl, Morai, flying overhead. None of them remember what happened on Mortis, but that's enough for Vader to know through the Force something here. She's still here.
Yeah.
I don't get to feel settled yet. Okay. I still don't know what happened to my apprentice until they then meet again in Twilight of the Apprentice, which I mentioned before. Up until the last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars was the highest rated thing on IMDb for Star Wars.
Wow. Okay, great. Do you have any more trivia questions for me?
Yes, including droids. How many guards do we see Ahsoka kill in the episode?
Holy crap, it's so many. Because
so many.
She has 2 killing sprees in this episode. I mean, at least 2 killing sprees.
It may not be as many as you think. But
okay. I mean, I think she must kill at least 5 in the opening sequence. And 11 total?
I counted 14.
Okay. I believe it.
I could have gotten that wrong. There was one part I went to go back and watch because I went through it a little quickly and felt like I may have missed one, but then I forgot.
She is a little bloodlusty, for sure. Although some of them are droids, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We should rattle off some quotes here. I mean, we've said everything there is to say about this episode. It was a really phenomenal piece, and I agree with the vast majority of people. And the nice thing about this one is it was some of the best and most interesting and revealing and witty dialogue we've had in the season so far.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great dialogue. Let's see what some of the good moments or some of the good bits were.
As I said, my price is high. A Mandalorian and a Jedi, they'll never see it coming. Lang actually had a couple of good quotes, which is funny.
Yeah, you're going to need it where you're headed. I keep it around for luck. Who do you think's going to win? Could be your side, could be my side. I got no quarrel with you, Mandalorian. You know, you and I are a lot alike, willing to lay our lives down for the right cause, which this is not. Sounds like you win.
He did kind of have a Woody Harrelson vibe to him, didn't he? Which we've seen before in Star Wars and talked about ad nauseum.
It was great the way he tried to pull a fast one and was just like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, not happening.
I'm not buying any of this shit.
So you threw in with a Jedi? Looks that way?
I love that line.
Me too. Wake up, buddy. It's time to say goodbye. Breaks your heart. Breaks your heart.
You're like a father to him. I cannot train him. Super video gamey line. Go to the planet Tython. Yeah. There you will find the ancient ruins of the temple that has a strong connection to the Force. Place Grogu on the Seeing Stone at the top of the mountain. Then Grogu may choose his path. If he reaches out through the Force, there's a chance a Jedi might sense his presence, come searching for him. Then again, there aren't many Jedi left.
Well, let me remind you, there you will find is how he ended up here on Corvus. That's what Bo-Katan said to him.
There you will find Ahsoka Tano.
Right.
And everything is quid pro quo with friggin' Din Djarin. I think we know what "this is the way" actually means. He's stubborn. That would be a first. I like firsts, good or bad. They're always memorable.
I've seen what such feelings can do to a fully trained Jedi Knight. To the best of us, I will not start this child down that path. Better to let his abilities fade.
Over time, yeah.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, obviously referring to Anakin there.
Oh, yeah.
His attachment to you makes him vulnerable to his fears, his anger.
What do you think for an episode title? There's some good ones in there.
I like firsts, good or bad. They're always memorable.
Yeah, that's really
Grogu
good.
and I can feel each other's thoughts.
Okay.
So you threw in with the Jedi.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I
like those three.
Okay.
Any of those could work.
Any final words on episode 2.4, 2.5, The Jedi? Really good.
It really was. It'd be interesting to see who took him and saved him from the Jedi Temple. I mean, we chatted a lot more about kind of who's likely to come for him, but like, was it Jocasta Nu, the librarian? Was it someone from the dark? I don't think it was. Was it? Did Anakin spare him?
No.
Did
Anakin didn't spare anyone?
But
Not
if that's
that
the
day.
case, like, he killed all those younglings in that room. Did like Grogu find like a loose floorboard, and he saw like Master Skywalker's coming in? I sensed some pissed off tension in Master Skywalker. I'm gonna hide under here. Can you go ask Mr. Skywalker what's up? And we know there's too many of them, and that's why I'm gonna hide under here.
There was some really lovely Dadalorian moments in this episode, like in the
pacing.
Well, and also like, get the rock, Grogu. He's almost like talking to him like he's a dog.
Do you want this? Well,
Yeah.
go ahead. That's right. Take it. Come on. You can have it. Come on. Good job. Oh, good job, kid. You see that? That's right. I knew you could do it. Very good. He's so proud of him.
He is.
But the pacing that he does, like when Ahsoka and him are meditating, it's like a dad waiting outside like the delivery room.
Yeah.
Or like a kid being interviewed for like a private school. And it's just like, is he going to get in? Is he going to get in? I know he can do it. I swear I saw him.
Right.
I promise you he can do this. He's really smart.
It's really sweet. Yeah.
It is really sweet. And it further proves that he's like a father to him, and that that is the true journey and point of the show. And it was really, really wonderful.
Just one other cool set design thing. How about the stalks, the
Dinosaurs?
city? Oh, that's true. No, I was going to say like the gallows where the people are like being tortured outside the city gate.
Those were gross. Those
Horrifying.
were awful.
Yeah.
So mean, but very, very, very Star Warsy. So on the nose with the way that it just felt so. I felt like I've seen them before almost.
Was it clear to you that this like random peasant was rightfully the governor of this city? That was kind of a weird transition for me.
Oh, no, that was one of my other questions I had that I forgot to write down. Anyway, do you know his name?
Wing?
Yeah, Governor Wing.
Yeah. Okay, we should move on. There's probably, there's at least one significant news item that we should probably get to because we're running long, unsurprisingly, today.
Yeah, I think that's fairly fair. There was one other thing. Sorry, I just wanted to check on the episode. Let's see. No, I guess... No, that was the dinosaurs we just mentioned. Those were really interesting.
But distant.
Sorry?
Distant, like they're just kind of shadows in the distance.
They do show one a little more up close. It would have just been cooler to learn a little bit more about them. It's always nice to kind of see, and it just made the world feel even more like, where the fuck are we? It felt a little more like Dagobah, which is, of course, right to learn more about little Grogu on.
Right, yeah, a civilized Dagobah.
Certainly.
Kind of.
Let's move on to kind of the news and some of the other things going on. I'll talk a couple bit more things about what's actually to come on the remainder of this season of Mando.
Okay.
So no more Sasha Banks this season. She indicated that. So that means that there's a decent chance no more of that Mando trio. But in that same vein, we also do know that Rosario Dawson worked with the dude, Simon Kasam. I don't remember his last name, but it starts with, I think, a Kass.
Okay.
So if she worked with him, then that means that they've either started working on stuff for later in the season, or part of that, like 2 of the 3 Mandalorians and Ahsoka come back in one of the last episodes of the season. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but it does seem to indicate that they will be turning up again, but we're not sure when. Maybe in the next couple episodes, maybe not. So there's been some kind of confliction there, which I'm not really sure as to what that really means. I had mentioned a little while back about Rosario Dawson having some kind of gross accusations against her and against her family. Fortunately, 18 of 20 of them were dropped. All of them against her were dropped. No settlement outside of court. They were just completely dropped by the person.
Just family drama.
It was the last 2 that are still remaining. It's a family friend, and I think they're against her mother. She was very open and spoke about them, saying that if this were true, it would be terrible, and I would be on all your side. And she does have a long track record that made this seem weird. So she handled it correctrectly. They've all been dropped, and it seems like the issue's handled itself, and that it's not an issue at all.
Yeah.
And so that's really nice to see, because it always seems like where there's smoke, there's fire, but not always. And so that was a nice one to see, especially with her getting so much great spotlight, to not have anything untrue hanging over her.
Right.
Another thing that is kind of interesting, I heard from a fairly credible outlet that Slave One will be in this season.
Oh, cool.
And so that means Boba's coming back this season.
Good.
And so that means there may be some Boba Fett cliffhanger that means that lends more logic behind why we need a mini series to explain maybe his role in season 3.
Maybe you're right.
So he is coming likely back. Who knows in what capacity or who he's working with. I've always kind of felt like he was working with Gideon. I feel like there's a better chance Boba Fett's working with Gideon than there is that Thrawn's working with Gideon, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one you were probably referring to as the big news piece that is the biggest bummer news piece of sure, which would be the passing of David Prowse.
Yeah, that really seemed to hit people kind of hard. And to be perfectly honest, if you had told me he wasn't with us anymore anyway, I would have believed you, because it's not a name you hear very often. And frankly, it's not a name you hear very often, even in tandem with Star Wars. It's so lost on many people that, in fact, it was 3 men came together to make original trilogy Darth Vader, not even including George Lucas's input. It's just Sebastian Shaw and David Prowse and James Earl Jones. And this is the guy who you never saw or heard. And yet his involvement in the development of the character is equally important. More important, frankly, than Sebastian Shaw's.
Definitely.
Because his physical menace, just his presence, is one of the most iconic film presences. Anyway, and I guess because we all knew that even internally without it exactly fitting the pieces together, taking a lot of time to appreciate him on a regular basis, I think we all were subconsciously aware of that. And so it was really sad when he passed away. He was 85 years old.
Yeah, he was suffering from Alzheimer's, apparently.
Okay.
But the worst part is, though, he passed from COVID, unfortunately. So.
Oh, okay. I think I did know that, actually.
Wear a mask, people.
Yeah.
But yeah, that certainly is unfortunate.
He did wear a mask, to be fair.
He did, absolutely. Yeah. That's my point. So in honor of the man, David Prowse, the man behind the mask, wear your fucking masks, people.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a pretty great example of good reason behind it. And even like James Earl Jones felt like David Prowse was the more important role of the 2 of them. So I think that's
he famously
I think that's nice.
Famously had some words after he realized that he'd been dubbed over, and he has like a thick Scottish brogue. And on the one hand, you're glad that obviously you're glad that James Earl Jones is the voice of Darth Vader. You couldn't imagine it any other way. But if you'd never experienced that, would some kind of electrolyzed Scottish accent work behind Darth Vader? After all, that's what Bane sounds like, and it's kind of silly. And yet it's also not so silly that it doesn't work. And so maybe there could have been a Scottish Darth Vader. I don't know. It's possible.
Maybe, but I'm going to say the right decision was certainly made.
Look, I agree. I'm just saying, in another world, there's an alternative universe where Darth Vader was Scottish, and those people loved Star Wars too.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that George Lucas, or I should, well, yeah, he did, but like they shot the scene with David Prowse as well for David Prowse, the Sebastian Shaw scene.
Yeah. Okay.
So like he got to do the lines and got to act it with Mark Hamill. And I like maybe he has that tape or something. They did let him take the mask off. They just didn't use it in the movie.
I mean, he was in the suit for 3 movies. What was so wrong with him getting to be the unmasked Anakin Skywalker on camera?
To be honest, probably because he wouldn't look kind enough as a Force ghost.
Oh, okay.
That's probably the only that's the only thing I can think of. And also the voice, you'd have to dub over him again.
Well, he's an actor. He could probably change his voice if he had to.
He wasn't an actor, really. He was a bodybuilder. He did apparently, I didn't know this, but he trained Christopher Reeve for Superman. And so like he certainly worked in the industry, but he wasn't and he was an actor in the sense that he was certainly a physical actor. But he wasn't an actor in a traditional sense.
And he was offered Chewbacca as well.
Yes, and wanted Darth Vader because everybody knows a bad guy.
Yeah, it's true. He chose well.
Yes, but they knew James Earl Jones.
Yeah, you're right. What else? What else is going on?
Not really a whole lot else in the news. We are getting a second season of The Mandalorian Gallery, which is awesome. I adored season 1, so I'm really excited to see the behind the scenes on all of this stuff.
Yeah,
like, that's going to be so incredible. So this episode in particular, thus far, would take the cake on what I would want to see the behind the scenes on. Dave Filoni talked about it a little bit, and Rosario Dawson as well, and they thanked Ashley Eckstein as well for her involvement in such a long time on creating the character, and that's something that the whole community has been really great at. Loving and being really excited about Rosario, but at the same time appreciating and giving call-outs to Ashley Eckstein for being the voice and brought the character to life for so long.
And she is not involved with this new Ahsoka iteration at all.
Not at all. And I don't think she really even knew anything about it until the rumors came on the internet, in the same way that Timothy Zahn, the creator of Thrawn, back in the late 80s when he was writing those books, he didn't even know this was coming. And so he thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And if I'm Timothy Zahn, I would think that's really cool too. I would. If I'm Ashley Eckstein, I might, in my right brain, think this is really cool, and in my left brain feel a little weird about it.
I think that's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
I think it would be impossible to not feel that way a bit. And I would hope that Dave Filoni gave her a good heads up, but we don't know, and you don't know how the industry can work. And hopefully she's just been a very good sport about pretending to be dumb, but was told long ago. But she doesn't have the same acting experience as other potential people who could take that role. And maybe she could have done a good job, but it's also an Ahsoka who's a lot older, and so
she's not old enough.
Get away with that.
She's not old enough to play this current Ahsoka. By the way, Ashley Eckstein rules. I heard her on a podcast about 6 months ago, and she's just a really cool, wonderful person who wants good things for young female Star Wars fans, and she's really proud of what Ahsoka can represent to Star Wars. And so I certainly hope she gets to continue being a version of that character, and whether it's at Galaxy's Edge or in some capacity, I'm sure she can continue having a relationship with that character.
I think very much so. I still think that she's likely working on a show. I think that there's likely multiple Ahsoka projects in the works. I think there's a decent chance there could be 2 Rebels spinoffs, and that they could deal with a couple different timelines. Maybe not, but it wouldn't be. But that doesn't mean that it's the end of Ahsoka. Nope. If they ever took her off of the animation voiceover, fans would be livid. There would be no logic behind that, and no reason in doing that. I mean, Ashley Eckstein was the one, as a very young voice actress was brought in by someone like George Lucas and a fresh-faced Dave Filoni, and so she's grown with the character, and so she would fit for that regard. But that also allows someone like Rosario so much backlog to work with as well, and helped her frame the character. And she even said that and watched lots of Clone Wars to be able to know the character so well.
There's something I can very easily picture Cory Booker watching lots of Clone Wars with Rosario Dawson. I can very easily see him geeking out over Clone Wars for some reason.
Yes, they seem very, very lovely.
Yeah, cute couple for sure. Yeah. What else? What else is going on? Is that it?
Not a whole lot, really. I've got some notes here that I've got left over from last week, I see. I don't think there's really anything else in the news.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any birthdays?
Just one, not a big birthday week. A happy birthday on Tuesday, December 1st to Riz Ahmed. Probably never going to be seen in Star Wars again. Hopefully we see him somewhere.
Love Riz Ahmed.
Yeah.
Bodhi Rook is one of the most useless characters in Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, he does get to name the movie.
He does. In
in one of the worst.
Those standalone movies did really weird gags about the way that they introduced the title of the movie.
Yeah.
Han Solo. We're Rogue One. Hey, Luke, you're a new hope for me on this. I think we got to make sure that this blowing up the Death Star here doesn't make the Empire strike back. They don't do any of that shit. But Rogue One is a good title, whereas Solo.
The opening crawl for The Force Awakens is just the Force is asleep.
Well, they kind of. I did actually. I hate the name The Rise of Skywalker. I think it's one of the worst named movies. And I don't like the name The Last Jedi for the way that it's the middle movie in the series. And I don't necessarily think it's the best named one, but it definitely sounds Star Wars-y.
Yeah.
But I like the way that they used those kind of like the logic behind the way that those movies were named. And all of the saga movies have good logic behind their naming. I think Rise of Skywalker and Attack of the Clones are the only ones that I just don't like at all.
Attack of the Clones is just very serialized sounding. It sounds like we've often talked about how it sounds like.
Who are they attacking?
No, you're right. But Return of the Jedi, there's lots said about how it was supposed to be Revenge of the Jedi, which would have been a bad title too.
It would have been a very bad title.
Yeah.
And actually, Return of the Jedi is my favorite title for its implications on Anakin.
Yeah.
More so than even the fact that it is referring to Luke and the Jedi as a whole.
Is that urban myth true, by the way, that both George Lucas wanted Revenge of the Jedi and Gene Roddenberry wanted Revenge of Khan, and so they both just decided not to pick Revenge, and they both came up with better titles for their movies?
I think it is true, but I don't think it's true that they both did it because they both wanted it.
Okay.
I think George Lucas changed it because he realized it was a mistake. That may have been the case as to why Trek did it. I have heard that one, but there's also so many Star Wars urban myths that aren't true that one could be one of them. But I don't know. I should look into that.
Well, happy birthday to Riz Ahmed. We would very much like to hear your thoughts on the Mandalorian episode, The Jedi, anything that you can predict about what's to come, any questions you might have for Ross, because God knows I don't know. You can email us at recorder66podcast@gmail.com or tweet us at recorder66. Rate and review on your preferred podcast app. Next week, we will be back with episode 6 from season 2, and so very likely
14.
Entering some kind of final arc. We're probably inching towards some kind of climactic excitement in Friday's episode of The Mandalorian. Can't wait for that. Until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.